Oh, I also forgot to time it.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I still sound like I have a hell of an echo. All right, are you ready now?
Yes.
And in 3, 2. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Team Morale Podcast, where we do our 3 favorite things: talk a little bit of booze, a little bit of beer, and a whole lot of basketball. E and the tall guy coming at you from Fort Worth. Tall guy, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Just showing up here after work, ready to talk about some of the new news coming out in the NBA.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about today. COVID being on the top of everyone's mind in the NBA community because it's impacting games being canceled. And so that is what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah, and they just released a whole bunch of new protocols that was officially gone through the NBA and the NBPA. And so we're going to kind of go through all that stuff and what's it going to impact our schedule and what's going to impact our beloved NBA that's being destroyed by the COVID.
Yeah, it's a bummer. You hate to see it. It's super sad. We don't want to see anyone getting sick. So anything that we can do to keep our players safe, we're all here for. But we have a couple of those rules that we're looking at and we're like, wow, that's kind of a little interesting.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
But before we get into that, let's talk what we're drinking today. We have a bit of a common whiskey on the podcast today, but it's a goodie.
Yes, it's one of the more popular whiskeys. I'm sure you've heard of it. It is Maker's Mark, the Kentucky Straight Bourbon whiskey. And the thing I love about Maker's Mark is that it probably has one of the most distinguishable bottles that you'll be able to find out on the shelves because they dip it into wax. And so like you go and you're looking around and it's typically made of red wax. And it's the red wax that they usually do. And they actually sued a company over it a few years back and won the lawsuit because the red wax is so big for them and their branding. But the one that we happened upon at our local liquor store here is actually blue and silver.
Yeah, when we saw it, we were like, what's up with Maker's Mark? They always have the red wax. They're always known for it. And this one's got blue and silver, and we were looking through our phones trying to figure out why this one had blue and silver, if it was like a special bottle or anything, and we really couldn't find anything definitive. There's a couple of theories we came up with, though.
Yeah, one of them comes straight out of our handy dandy whiskey book, and it's that they actually have some commemorative Kentucky Wildcat bottles that they came out with that usually come out with the blue and silver. But we also read on the internet that it could be
a Dallas Mavericks bottle. Back in 2011, we did some digging and found that they made a certain number, I don't know the exact number, of blue and silver wax dip bottles for commemorating the Dallas Mavericks championship run in 2011. So this bottle might be a holdover from one of those years, which would make it kind of an old bottle.
Yeah, very unique, very cool. So a little background on Maker's Mark. It was originally created by Bill Samuels Sr. back in the 1950s. One of his good friends was Julian Van Winkle II, who is actually the son of Julian Van Winkle, a.k.a. Pappy Van Winkle, who is one of the great distributors of whiskey and kind of really making whiskey popular throughout America.
Yeah, kind of a celebrity in the whiskey world.
Yeah, and like the Pappy Van Winkle whiskey, like by itself, is several $100s. Very, very. I don't know if we're going to be popping that one out anytime soon.
If anyone wants to hear us do a Pappy Van Winkle podcast, please send us a Pappy Van Winkle bottle because
donate.
We're not getting one on our own.
Please donate to the Team Morale podcast. We'll happily tell you how good it is.
We have our Patreon. You can donate there, or we have Venmo. Just reach out to us.
Yeah. But Maker's Mark is very unique. Their whole reason why they created it is that they didn't like the harshness of what Jim Beam had, and they didn't like the sweetness of Jack Daniels. And so their goal was to be a mainly wheat style whiskey that was kind of in the middle. And I think that they kind of really nailed it on the head. It was around the 1980s that they really started gaining their popularity, and people really started coming around to it is around the same price point as a Jack Daniels or a Jim Beam, but it's kind of right there in the middle where I quite enjoy Maker's Mark. It's one of my personal favorites.
Yeah, you hit the nose on the head when you describe it as in the middle of Jim Beam and Jack Daniels, because you're right, it doesn't have the bite of Jim Beam. You can, sip on it and, not like feel the burn, but then it's not the candy that is Jack Daniels. It's that middle ground.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Maker's Mark. Last time I drank it, shout out to my buddy Anthony, who gave me a bottle of Maker's Mark on my journey down here to Dallas. I stopped over in Arizona where he is, and he gave me a whole bottle, and I downed that pretty quickly. I'm a big Maker's Mark fan.
It's a goodie. It's a goodie for sure.
Yeah. So we'll take some sips and we'll tell you what it tastes like later on.
Yeah, absolutely. But but after getting into that, let's talk what's going on right now, which is COVID has the NBA by the neck right now. Teams are just have outbreaks. Games are being postponed. Some of the teams that have the worst outbreaks right now are the Dallas Mavericks, the 76ers, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Boston Celtics, the Houston Rockets had it earlier in the year. It's just kind of just popped up, and all of a sudden all these teams are having to postpone games.
Yeah, so today is officially the third straight day that we've had a game postponed. A couple days ago was the Heat Celtics. Yesterday was the Pelicans Mavs, and then today is the Celtics Bulls. So the Celtics obviously are getting hit pretty hard with it. The Mavericks got hit pretty hard with it. Dallas, the whole Metroplex has been kind of booming with the COVID, which makes a lot of sense. Why the Mavs are starting to get postponed too, and so the league realize that this is going to be obviously it's going to be a real issue, but just now it's starting to actually affect our teams and getting players sick and the contact tracing to enough to where it's actually postponing games.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see the difference between how the NBA is handling it versus the NFL, which the NFL was like, we're just going to chug along, and if we have to move the schedule around, we will. But the difference is NFL has so many players. The NBA, you get 6 guys sick, there goes half your roster.
Yeah, and the league mandated rules is you have to have 8. You must have 8 eligible players to not have the game postponed. And when I originally heard that, I was like they'll be fine. 8 is a sure number to where you pretty much will keep the games chugging along. And for the most part, they are. But now we're starting to see postponements, and we're going to have another postponement tomorrow with the Magic and the Celtics. And I think we have another postponement with the Jazz.
And there's no guarantee that the Mavericks will play tomorrow either.
Yes.
That game is still up in the air. And it's not necessarily 8 players that are sick. It is 8 players that have been exposed through contact tracing. And that is where a lot of teams fall into trouble, is because, 3 or 4 players will end up getting infected or getting, testing positive. And then they practice with so-and-so, they ate lunch with so-and-so, and then those 2 guys now can't play until they have X amount of positive tests or negative tests.
Yes. And whenever you guys actually hear the term health and safety protocols, that's pretty much the NBA's version of saying that guy either has COVID or has COVID tracing and he's not going to be able to play, but they don't necessarily want to just release that a guy has COVID right now because they kind of want to protect his safety.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're not here to get into the politics of the whole thing, because this everything that's gone on has become very polar, and we're not trying to get into that. We're just trying to talk about what is happening with the NBA and where the teams are going to go and where how the NBA is handling it. And in my opinion, they're handling it right by trying to keep the players safe while trying to keep games happening as quickly as they can and keeping this season to as much of a normal as we can.
Yes, exactly. So with all that being said, the NBA and the NBA Players Association today came out with, today as in Tuesday.
Yeah, we are pre-recording this Tuesday. You guys will hear this tomorrow.
Yes.
Which will be Wednesday.
Yes. So they came out with several bullet points and rules and guidelines to keep our players healthy and to keep the league going and keep the season going, because nobody wants to lose money. They've already lost, over $1 billion.
Yeah, the NHL came out the other day and said that their losses were over $1 billion, and they are much smaller in terms of fan size and market than the NBA is. So, if that's a reference point, the NBA is losing a lot.
Yes. So they obviously don't want to lose any more money. So it's how can we keep our season going? So here are some of the bullet points. Here's the first one. Activities outside the team environment. For at least the next 2 weeks, players and team staff are required to remain at their residence when the team is at its home market at all times, except to attend team-related activities at their facility or arena, exercise outside, or perform essential activities, or as a result of extraordinary circumstances. Away from work interactions are limited to those with household members, family and personal staff, and working regularly in the home. When on the road, players and team staff are prohibited from leaving their hotel other than for team activities or emergencies, or interacting with non-team guests at the hotel. So that's their first bullet point, is pretty much stay home.
Yeah. Let's try to limit and social distance and keep ourselves as safe as we can, which I think is what we're all kind of doing.
Yeah. But the NBA is going to start being very, very strict on this. It makes you wonder how many of the players, when they're away, are still going out to clubs or going out to restaurants. Or
James Harden.
James Harden, you specifically, buddy. How many of the guys are, not following all of the kind of looser rules that the NBA had going into the season? Because now they're just like, stay home. Like, do not do anything. Do not talk to anyone outside of like your immediate network. This is vital.
Well, I mean, the NBA, I'm sure it's a scary thing when all of a sudden you're like, wait, we have to postpone games. If we have to postpone the season again or pause the season, we can't lose that money. And so the NBA, it might be, a gut reaction. It might be a harsh reaction. You might think of me like, man, these guys are adults. They can handle it themselves. But there's so much money on the line with this season that the NBA is not leaving it up to chance.
No, not at all. They don't. Yeah, you don't want to leave any of this up to chance. And
or players' discretion. Like the NBA is being like, no, we're in charge now. You have to do what we say because there's so much money on the line here that we can't lose this.
Yeah. And God forbid, imagine a player like legitimately getting COVID and getting really, really sick, because some of the new strains and stuff that are coming out are getting people very, very sick. Obviously I'm a Blazer fan and like that's where most of my knowledge comes from, but the only guy I've actually heard of that has gotten really genuinely sick out of the NBA was Nasir Little. He didn't play any of the preseason. He didn't play any of the games up until our very last game, and the dude got COVID and lost 20 pounds.
Yeah.
20 pounds.
And that's like a guy, prime athlete, doing, working out every day, best shape out of anybody, really.
20 years old, prime health, and getting COVID, and it like really affected him and his body and his athleticism. And he came out the other night, and you could just tell he's lost so much muscle.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot out of you. I mean, it's scary, and it's one of those things where, the NBA is trying to be like, let's keep our players safe, but and also, let's keep, the season chugging along. Let's try not to lose more money.
Yes. So the whole goal, I think, originally is keep the players safe, but also, you guys, let's get our cash. Let's get our money. Let's keep this thing going.
It's all a business, and, it's a bummer that, everyone's having to deal with this. The world's having to deal with this. We can't have a normal season where we're, talking basketball, but we have to talk about, health and safety protocols. But this is where we're at, and safety is the number one thing. Especially this year and going forward until we all get through this. Safety is the number one thing. Keeping the players safe, keeping the fans safe, keeping everyone safe is the most important thing to the NBA. And, money.
Yes, exactly. All right, so on to their next bullet point. Meetings. For at least the next 2 weeks, any pregame meeting in the locker room is limited to no more than 10 minutes in duration, and all attendees must wear a face mask. All other meetings involving players and team staff must continue to occur on the court in a league-approved space or at the arena in a room large enough to provide for at least 6 feet of distance between individuals. Meeting attendees must continue to wear face masks at all times. So they're like, it's almost going like above and beyond, going a little bit too far into like, yeah, these guys are like, we all think like, oh, these guys go out and they're going to like get sweat on each other and they're breathing on each other and they're going to play basketball against each other. But they're very serious. Like, they don't want guys high-fiving each other at the free throw line. They don't want guys hugging each other out, pregame, postgame. Like, they're going to take this contact stuff very, very seriously.
And they mentioned this is for the next 2 weeks. This is a starting point to go, all right, for the next 2 weeks until we kind of, figure everything out and get everything under control and see kind of how bad, like, if we can get these teams to start playing games again. I mean, the Boston Celtics have missed, their last 3 games? Mm-hmm. And no sign of coming back in sight. The Mavericks have no idea when they're going to play again. Now it sounds like the Jazz are going to be out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, it's until they can figure out, everyone playing again, I think the next 2 weeks are going to be super strict. And yes, so meetings cannot be longer than 10 minutes. If you're going to have a longer meeting, it has to be in a approved place that has a big area where everyone can spread out and be social distance, which is ironic given the fact that these guys are going to go play basketball and post each other up and set screens and be within 6 feet of each other. But I mean, when you can't be like that, let's not be like that.
Yeah, limit it as best you can. And going through all this and seeing like all the postponements, it makes me realize how smart the NBA was going into the season about the whole like, we're going to release the first half of the schedule, and like that goes just about through middle or beginning of March, and then they're going to release the second half later. It's so smart to do that, because there's going to be a ton of makeup games at some point.
Yeah, the second half of the schedule is going to be backloaded for sure. Teams are going to be playing a lot in the second half of the season, and it was brilliant on the NBA's part, because that way they can be like, oh, we can just kick the can down the road and we'll deal with it later, and then come when they have to release the second half of the schedule, they'll figure everything else out. And I wouldn't be surprised if they release like only half of the second half of the schedule so they can kick the can down the road again if they have to postpone some more.
Yes. Yeah, I would not be surprised at all. This season could end up like extending a little bit longer than what we're used to, where you usually have your finals relatively in June, give or take. But now, they're going to extend this season as long as they need to get all of the games that they want to get in, which is 72, so they can get the TV money from all those games, get your advertising money, and then move into the playoffs. So I thought that was very smart on their part.
Yeah, it might be inconvenient and a little wonky, and the season might be weird, but hey, at least we're having basketball. At least we have, the game that we love. At least the NBA is doing things to make everything happen.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so next bullet point. So this is for teams that are on the road. For team flights, teams must create a seating plan on planes so that players whose assigned seats are closest to each other on the bench for games are also closest to each other on the team plane. Interesting. All treatment sessions at a hotel, such as massages and physical therapy, must occur in a ballroom or other large and open space with at least 12 feet between individual stations. Face masks and face shields are required for all individuals during such sessions.
And again, I think this is the NBA going at it and basically saying like, listen, we know you guys are going to be near each other. We know. That's just the nature of the beast. It's part of the risk of playing a contact sport right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when we don't have to be within 6 feet of each other, let's not be within 6 feet of each other.
Yeah.
And again, it seems a little ironic, it seems a little hypocritical, but the NBA is doing the best it can with the cards it's dealt. In order to play the game, the guys have to be within 6 feet, but when they're not playing the game, let's keep them out away from each other.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Especially when you're in a situation where you have to travel as much as they have to travel. And I've traveled on their team planes. It's not like they're going, into like a normal DFW airport and going through security or anything like that. So they still stay away from all of the normal people during travel. But that being said, you're still running into hotel staff. You're still running into restaurant staff, especially before all these protocols. Like, you're going out and you're going to get you're going to get food at different restaurants, and you're still kind of going out to towns, especially ones that like maybe a little bit more open, say like Dallas. Dallas is still fairly open. Players come to Dallas, they're going to want to go to some of the nicer restaurants. These new protocols are very much specific, like, you got to stay in your hotel room. It sucks. We understand, like, you're young and in the prime of your life. You're an NBA athlete. You obviously want to go out and hang out with people and do stuff, but you just can't.
And neither can anybody else.
No.
Right now. I mean, yes, Dallas is more open, but everything is not the way it should be right now. And, everyone's dealing with it. You make millions of dollars. It's what you signed up for to play a sport. You lose some of your own ability to choose some things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's the nature of the beast.
Yes, you're under whatever the NBA tells you, whatever rules the NBA tells you have to be under, and it's just nature of the beast. It's going to be more rules now than ever, and we all got to work together to get through this. And these NBA guys, it sucks, but this is your reality right now. At least you can still play the games.
I was about to say, at least you're playing.
Yeah.
And at least there are things that are happening. And again, it seems ironic, but in the NBA's perspective, if they're not playing the game, why not keep them 6 feet apart? Just it makes sense that way. I've read and seen a lot of people being like, well, what's the point? Like, they're playing the games anyways. But when they're not playing the games, let's keep them apart. It's not going to hurt anything.
Yeah. And, a part of me thinks that, like, part of this might be optics. you see the players sitting 6 feet from each other and wearing masks, and they got the plastic shields in between each other, and it's like, okay, well, those guys clearly are just going to go have dinner with each other afterwards. Now, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. Like, actually, no, they're not. They're going to go straight back to their hotel room. They're going to sit alone. They're going to get their room service, and they're not going to hang out with each other. So it's like they're really trying to like embrace the whole like optics of staying within staying apart from 6 feet and like taking that like off the court to where we know that they're not going to be doing that stuff. Now they have to.
It's a tough existence right now, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah. All right. You ready to hear what some of the game day rules?
Please.
This is kind of the things that we were talking about a little bit earlier. So game day. Players are prohibited from arriving at the arena for more than 3 hours before tip-off, which is for a lot of guys like Kobe. Kobe showed up 5-6 hours to the arena and got like 2 different workouts in before games.
Yeah, it's not super uncommon for people to show up 5 hours or 3 hours before the game, but it's also not out of the realm of possibility either.
Yes. All right. And then during the pre and post game periods, players must limit interactions to elbow or fist bumps, avoiding extended socializing, and maintain 6 feet of distance as much as possible. So I mentioned this earlier, but they're not going to allow like high fives at the free throw line anymore. It has to be all fist bumps or elbow bumps. Sorry, whiskey burp.
That's the part that I'm looking at this and being like, all right.
Yeah.
That's a little weird. Like, I mean, all right, you're already on the court. Like, the difference between a fist bump and a high five are not, to me, drastic enough to really be worth mentioning.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what, now you can't high five your teammate when he makes a free throw? It is like...
Or at all.
Yeah, it's like clearly the NBA is going on the way overcautious side of this. They're kind of helicopter parenting the NBA right now. But if you're going to helicopter parent, right now is the perfect time to do it because you have to. And these are a bunch of young dudes that are going to do what they want to do. So you just got to implement a whole bunch of rules that they have to follow all of them. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing to be overbearing right now. But they're just, in my opinion, it's kind of funny. They're saying, hey, let's fist bump, but you can't high five.
Yeah, or elbows. I think the whole elbows thing is going to be kind of funny. I bet that's going to be a thing after COVID, but it's just weird. I better start moisturizing my elbows, actually. Looking a little dry these days.
You don't play in the NBA, buddy.
Well, I don't, but still, if that's going to be a thing in the real world, I have something to worry about. But yes, the whole elbow thing, I think the whole thing is a little funny.
Yeah, at least that aspect of it for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So their next thing, which they've already mentioned this several times, but it's their face masks policy. All players must wear face masks on the bench at all times. Upon exiting the game and prior to returning to the bench, players can sit in cool-down chairs arranged at least 12 feet from the bench, with each chair 6 feet apart where face masks are not required. Once a player has cooled down, he must return to his assigned seat on the bench and wear a face mask until he enters the game again. Players must always wear face masks in the locker room during strength and conditioning activities and when traveling with anyone other than a household member. Coaches and other team staff must wear face masks at all times during the games. I hadn't heard about that cool down thing until I just read it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that either, but it kind of makes sense. You come off, you're all sweaty, you're not necessarily wanting to like throw a mask on and be like, because sometimes, when you're breathing heavy, a mask kind of like is hard to like breathe through. So like
masks make it hard to breathe? Wow, what a concept.
And so like, it doesn't make it hard to breathe.
No, I know. No,
it definitely makes it like when you're like,
yeah, no,
after
I'm being
running
facetious.
a while. But I will say like, it gives them a second to catch their breath before they have to throw a mask on. But it will be kind of funny seeing players like walk around, sit for a minute, and then come back to the bench.
Yeah, it's almost like you're in detention. Like go throw the dunce cap on as you go sit away from your team for a little bit.
It's a little weird. It's a little quirky, but nothing about these past 2 NBA seasons haven't been a little weird and a little quirky. It's not necessarily bad. It's just the nature of the beast in order to play the games right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I could see like a James Harden getting frustrated with his team. He's like, I'm going to go to the cool down chair. They should allow that just for like emotional cool down.
Someone just gets super hot on the bench and is all mad. And he's like, you know what? I don't need you. I'm going to go sit over there.
Screw you guys. I'm going to the cool down chair. Okay, so this is the last bullet point of these new approved rules from the NBA. And it's testing. Any individual who regularly visits the interior of the home of the home of a player or a team staff member for a professional purpose must undergo COVID-19 testing twice per week. For any team with a positive player case or high-risk staff member case, the NBA may require players and team staff to undergo 5 consecutive days of twice per day lab-based testing in addition to daily point-of-care testing. So that's kind of just saying, like, anyone who's coming from outside of the organization has to be taking daily tests, along with, if your team is like kind of like the Celtics right now, they are all currently doing tests twice a day, and I don't think that they're going to be allowed to play until they have like 8 players valid of like no test for 5 days.
Yeah, and that, I think, in their mind is trying to get the players to, like, the players that are negative, they're trying to get to prove that they are negative as fast as they can. As safe as they can, as fast as they can, so they can get back to playing games.
Yeah.
Two tests a day. If you test negative 5 days in a row, twice a day, that's 10 negative tests. I think the NBA, in their minds, like, okay, it's safe to say that you don't have it. You can go back to playing basketball again without posing risk to anyone else.
Yes, exactly. And don't feel too bad for these guys. These tests that they're taking are not kind of the same, like, shove it into your brain tests that we're taking. It's kind of like nasal swabs that definitely go in and get, like, what they need, but it's not like, because they obviously have a whole bunch of money that they put into all of the medical pieces to the entire NBA. They've been doing this forever, not the test, but just like spending a whole bunch of money on taking care of their players. So the medical staffs and like being able to put it into labs, and they have this process really figured out. So these guys, it's not the worst thing in the world what they're going through right now.
It's not the worst, but it's definitely
Still
not.
Sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say they're not playing, which sucks, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but they are. It is not as bad as a normal COVID test. I've taken both the like rapid, and then for like some of my freelance gigs when I work for the Cowboys or different situations, I have to take the same test that some of the players take, and just to get into the arena, and they're not nearly as intrusive as the full ones.
Yeah.
Or not the full ones, but because they both are like equally as accurate. It just tests different. I don't know how it works. It's science.
It's science stuff. It's beyond us. It is very accurate for them,
it doesn't tickle
I'm
my
sure,
brain,
but
okay?
but it doesn't hurt your face as much.
I don't cry afterwards.
Dude, I remember when I took it, it was close to like the TC University, and they shoved the thing up my face. And it makes me start crying a little bit. I'm walking outside. There's all these cute girls. I'm like, okay, wipe it off. Wipe off the tears. Like, you're man it up, man.
All right, let's take a break here and get back into this Maker's Mark a little bit. We've talked a little bit of the NBA COVID policy. Just giving you guys an update on that. Going forward, there's definitely going to be more to be put into place. A lot is up in the air right now. I think the NBA is just kind of reacting to the massive inputs of positive testing and teams having to postpone games. So I think it's just going to continue from there. Hopefully they can get everything under control and move forward with more games, but that's all yet to be seen.
Yeah, it's I'm glad that the NBA is taking as many precautions as they are and really trying to like push the season forward as much as they are. It's all good stuff. It's none of this is bad news. It's all good news because we knew that there was going to be we know that COVID was going to get to players. We knew that there was going to be games postponed. I'm glad that they're jumping over it now sooner than later.
Keeping the players safe, and I'm glad that the people who have had it haven't been like terribly affected yet.
Yes, exactly.
But let's get back into this Maker's Mark.
Yes, the Maker's Mark. All right, so I was doing a little sniffing. So I was getting a little bit of cherry, which I looked down into the book, and actually I nailed it.
Did you?
There's a little bit of cherry.
Oh, he's handing me the book.
Yeah, I'm handing you the book.
Okay.
There's there's also like a little bit of pepper, and I think the pepper is like more on like the back end when you're swallowing it, but it's really not that bad. It's very, very smooth. I'll keep saying it. I like Maker's Mark a lot. Maker's Mark is one of my go-tos.
It's perfect definition of like smooth but not sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really nice. And I do read the nose is the smell is corn, vanilla, apple, butter, and some cherry.
Yes, some cherry. Some
cherry.
Not
all
I
cherry,
saw a
some
little
cherry.
I didn't get a whole lot of like vanilla, which usually is like those sweeter ones. You kind of gotta get you a bottle.
Yes,
there
yes,
you go.
I need a refill.
Get you some more. I feel like I usually get a lot of the sweeter taste first, which is probably why I picked up on some of the cherry. But like I didn't pick up almost any of the vanilla at all in it, and I can tell you what, I don't know how to taste corn in a whiskey yet.
Yeah,
I don't know. I can't taste a
yet.
whiskey and be like, yes, I get vegetable from this.
I mean, I'm happy to say that this podcast has gotten me to the point where I can taste a whiskey and be like, I taste a whiskey. Like, at least I taste other things now. That being said, my palate is far from refined.
And that's good. It's good stuff. Honestly, like if you're listening with us, if you're trying out new whiskeys, if you're going out to the store and buying some new stuff, try a bunch of new stuff because it's good. You're getting the new flavors in. You get what you like from one whiskey to the next, and the more like different varieties that you taste, the more you realize what you like.
Yeah, and what you don't like. And so,
more importantly,
on that note, if you guys have any recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. We are open to any and all suggestions. We're happy to try whatever people want us to try. We're excited to try new things, and that's just kind of why we're here.
Yeah, I love trying new whiskeys, but I do love going back to an old favorite in the Maker's Mark.
Yeah, we're talking about trying new things while trying one that we've had many times.
Yes, no, but it's one of those things. I like going back. I like going back to a Maker. There's a few staples that I have. Maker's Mark I find to be one of my favorites, especially with just like throw an ice cube in there, throw a couple ice cubes in there. Love me some Maker's Mark.
Yeah, and now tasting it, I do get cherry. I do get vanilla.
Ooh, do you?
I do not get corn.
It's easier to... You don't get corn yet?
I do not get corn.
It's definitely easier to like know... I'm this way with wine too. It's much easier to know what you're tasting, and like when you see the flavors in front of you, it's like, oh, that's the flavor I'm looking for. Oh, I get it now.
All right, next time I'll have the book in front of me, and I'll tell you, and you can guess, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong.
Oh, I don't like that experiment at all.
All right. Well, let's quickly touch on one other topic that we wanted to get to before the end of this podcast, and that is the question mark that is Kyrie Irving right now. He has left the Brooklyn Nets and has been out for personal reasons. He is missing his 4th game tonight against the Nuggets. And he was just recently spotted yesterday, which would be Monday, at a large indoor gathering without a mask on, meaning he has violated team or NBA policy, which means he could be suspended and lose his game checks going forward, which for him per game, based on his salary, $410,000 per game.
A game?
A game.
Wow. I would like $410,000.
So he's already missed out on like $1.2 million, and that's before he even gets suspended.
Wow. That's crazy. I wonder how much that affects Kyrie, honestly. Like he's a weird dude. He's a weird dude.
He goes about life in a weird way. There's just no real way to like explain what he's doing. I don't understand what he's doing. He's just away from the team. He's doing his thing. He has, from what we've read and seen, he has not talked to Steve Nash, the head coach, or anyone in the organization. Really, they don't. For a little while, they didn't know where he was.
Yeah, he went AWOL for a minute.
He was just MIA. Kevin Durant has come out and said, like, he stands by Kyrie. He's hoping and praying for the best. But, I mean, this is a weird situation that Kyrie has put the Nets organization in, and it didn't take long for that Nets locker room to already be in a spot where everyone's looking at him being like, locker room chemistry problems already.
Yeah, and it would be one thing if the Nets were winning, but they're 5-6 right now, going into their game against the Nuggets, which it's hard to believe that they're going to win that one.
And they're 1-3 without Kyrie.
Yeah.
In the 4 games he's been gone.
Yeah, so everyone's kind of looking around and be like, hey, man, do you have any interest in playing with us today? Because I remember the first game that he took off, and it came out that I forget like how the quote came about, but the quote from Kyrie was, hey, why didn't you play today? He said, I didn't want to. It's like, well, yeah, I didn't want to go to work today either, but I still showed up.
Yeah, I mean, so in the 4 games without Kyrie, they're 1-3. They are averaging 114.8 points per game, and their opponent is averaging 117.3 points per game. In the 7 games they've had Kyrie, they are 4-3, averaging 120.7 points per game, 6 points higher, and giving up 110.6 points per game, 7 points lower. So their point differential with him is a +10. Their point differential without him, a -3.
Wow. So 13-point difference.
Yeah, by one guy.
Just with and without him. Makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Kyrie, he's a great player.
He's a great player, and honestly, he was balling out going into this year, or at the beginning of this year. And it's really unfortunate that he's he's going through whatever he's going through. I hope that it's nothing like too serious personally. I know that he's a weird guy, but he's still a person. I hope that everything is okay with him.
And everyone deals with things differently, and he's been out for personal reasons, and he hasn't been transparent with that, and he by no means does he have to be. No. But there's a clear lack of communication between him and his team, and that's where my issue lies.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to be transparent with the media, with the fans at all, that you have no obligation to do that. But you signed a contract with this team. You owe them at least to tell them, like, at least why you're gone.
Yeah. And I would argue that, like, at the minimum, your team has to know, but being an NBA basketball player, you do have an obligation to show up to the media. I mean, at the beginning of the year, he was like, I'm not going to talk to the media. And the NBA is like, okay, well, we're going to fine you because you can't do that. It's like, it's part of your job. It's part of your job. Like, you need to talk to the media. You, like, the fan, like, your revenue source comes mainly from the fans. The fans want to know what's going on.
As to people that work in media, you and I, we wouldn't have jobs if you didn't talk to us.
No.
So you kind of have to talk to us.
So the Kyrie thing is very, very weird. He's gone from, I'm just going to, like, leave. I don't really want to tell you why I'm leaving, but I'm not going to play. And then he went to this birthday party. And he was gone for several games. Then he went to his birthday party. And now the NBA is investigating the birthday party and whether he was wearing a mask and whether he's liable for suspension, whether he's liable to have the pay decrease, which I think that they are going to end up doing. But it's just like this Kyrie thing is so weird and interesting, and it involves all this COVID stuff here at the tail end of what's already been a weird story.
So it's been labeled as that the Nets guard, Kyrie Irving, attended a large indoor party, maskless. That's the wording that they've used, is a large indoor party, maskless.
Which, if you remember, about 10 minutes ago when we were talking about all these different rules that the NBA is implementing for all their teams.
That's not one of them.
That's not what they were saying, is go to a big party involving a bunch of people indoor without a mask.
That's not on the list.
That's not what they were saying. So I could understandably see how the NBA is very frustrated with Kyrie Irving right now. So it's like the media's mad at him. The fans, I can't imagine, are super happy with him in Brooklyn. The league is not happy with him. He's making a whole lot of enemies early in this season. I'm glad that Kevin Durant at least has got his back right now, though.
Yeah, it's definitely a situation where he's not going to come back anytime soon. Because after being at that place, being seen maskless, he's going to have to go through X amount of tests, the 5 days, twice a day tests, I would assume, maybe even more. So, I mean, tonight's game against the Nuggets is just the, fourth of, I'm guessing, a few. And Steve Nash has come out and said he is sure and certain, those are the two words he used, sure and certain, that Kyrie will play again this year when asked if he's going to play again this year.
Oh, wow.
But when, I'm not sure. And I don't think anyone is.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Kyrie is.
Kyrie probably has no... I mean, he started this whole thing with like, oh, I'm gonna miss a couple games. And now it's turned into it's out of his hands how many games he's actually going to miss, because he's going to have to go through all of these protocols for a guy that stepped out of that NBA. I mean, it's not the bubble, but it is still a relative NBA bubble, and he stepped out of it, went to his own thing, and now they're gonna have to test him. It's really, right now it's TBD, and this Kyrie saga is gonna be really interesting because the Nets team could be good enough to win a championship, and it also could be bad enough to be a low, not even a home team for, in the East.
Right now they're below 500.
Yeah, they might end up being 5-7 after, like, if they do lose to the Nuggets tonight, which is what my prediction would be, is that they lose to the Nuggets, they're going to be 5-7.
It's not good.
No, it's not good. It's real bad.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Kyrie is okay. We don't want to speculate about what's going on because every person is different, and we've said that. And I mean, if he's really going through something, we hope he's okay. And like, we're not trying to, bash him for leaving his team, but we are, for a guy who has history of being interesting and weird about certain things, he's certainly being weird about this thing.
Yeah, he's being very, very, very weird about it. So we will keep up to date on the Kyrie Irving saga, and we will keep up to date on the coronavirus NBA saga and what is going on league-wide and with Kyrie, and we'll keep you guys updated.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps up what we're going to talk about tonight. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Team Morale podcast, brought to you by Maker's Mark tonight. Very happy to be back and talking some hoops and drinking some whiskey. We'll be back again with another podcast soon.
Heck yeah, it's my favorite thing to do. Cheers, man.